Hey everybody, today we're going to be going over how to complete the most dangerous game written response. Now, before we can get into that, you need to make sure you've already completed the quote gathering activity. So this was assigned to you yesterday. And what you had to do is you had to come up with reasons why Rainsford does not become the next Zaroff and reasons why Rainsford totally does become the next Zaroff. Now, what you had to do, as just a quick refresher, is find quotes for each column. You were supposed to find at least 4 to 5 quotes to prove each side of the argument. Again, this did not matter what side you believed in. You were just asked to have an open mind while doing this activity, to find the quotes, to cite the quotes correctly, and to put them in this chart. All right. So if you have that assignment done, one, make sure it's turned into Buzz because you will be getting some points for it. And then you can go ahead and make a copy of the most dangerous game written response. All right. So if you have that done, so if you have the gathering details activity already done, what you're now going to do is you are going to take a specific side. So the directions here say, fill out the graphic organizer below. Be sure to read all of the directions in the left column. Now, you're answering the question, does Rainsford become the next General Zaroff? In other words, does Rainsford stay on the island to continue to hunt humans? So we're going to work through the race model for this, and let's take a quick minute and talk about what race is. The race method is just a way to respond to a question, and it just gives you a way to make sure that you're getting across your beliefs and also providing evidence to support it. So here are the steps. When you have a question, first thing you're going to do is restate the question by turning it into a statement. Then you're going to answer the question being asked. Then you're going to cite evidence to prove your answer. And then you're going to explain the evidence you provided and make sure you're explaining how it supports the answer you've given. Now let's go ahead and go back to our document. The first thing we then need to do is restate and answer the question. So does Rainsford become the next General Zaroff? All you're going to do here is say either General or Rainsford does become the next General Zaroff, or Rainsford does not become the next General Zaroff. All right, so that was easy. In my example, I said Rainsford does become the next General Zaroff. Now, that's all you need to put. Just make sure, again, for this whole document, it is going for a grade. Make sure we are proofreading. Now, I am then going to provide some evidence to support that Rainsford becomes the next General Zaroff. So I'm going to look back at that quote gathering document, and I'm going to see what evidence I have. So let's go ahead and take a second, get back to our quote gathering document. Now, again, this was my example, and I only gave you one example, so yours should be a little bit more filled out than this, but the example I had was, be a realist. The world is made up of two classes, the hunters and the huntees. Luckily, you and I are hunters. So if that is the example I'm using, I'm going to go ahead and copy that example, and then I'm going to paste that example right here. All right, now, the big thing here, though, is you need to introduce this quote. We don't want to do what's called quote dumping. I don't just want to put the quote here and not introduce it, because then it's really clunky in the sentence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some of these sentence starters. So I could say in the text, or the text states, or according to the passage, or one example from the text. Anything along those lines that transitions into your quote is what we're looking for here. All right, so I'm going to come up with my own transition sentence. So I'm going to say, evidence to prove this can be found when Rainsford says. All right, so again, you could use any of these starters. You can also make your own. You basically just want to have a sentence that leads into your quote, so we're not just quote dumping. So far what I have is my restated statement with the answer, and then my citation with an intro phrase or a signal phrase. So here's how it reads so far. Rainsford does become the next General Zaroff. Evidence to prove this can be found when Rainsford says, be a realist. The world is made up of two classes, the hunters and the huntees. Luckily, you and I are hunters. Then I have author's last name, page number, period at the end. So I have my full citation there. All right, next I'm then going to explain. Now, notice it also says you should provide a signal phrase. So you're going to explain your quote by saying either this shows, or this quote proves, or this demonstrates. So I'm going to say this demonstrates. And then what I'm going to do from there is I'm going to explain how this quote proves that Rainsford becomes the next General Zaroff. So I asked myself, well, he's talking about how there's two classes of people, the hunters and the huntees. So as we talked about in class, like the powerful and those that don't have power in society. So maybe what I would talk about here is how this demonstrates Rainsford's belief on power and how he doesn't care much about people who are powerless. And then go on to say why I think that might lead to Rainsford becoming the next Zaroff. Then what you're going to do is you are going to scroll down. There is one more cite and explain, or there's another cite box here. So I'm going to go back then to my document. I'm going to pull another quote from whichever side I'm arguing. And then I'm going to go back and make sure I put the quote in the cite box, introduce my quote, and then I'm going to make sure I explain how that quote best supports my argument. You're going to do that one more time. So total, you are going to use 3 quotes to prove your argument. And then the last part of this is you are going to have a conclusion here. So you're going to make it clear to your reader why your claim is significant. For example, why is it significant that Rainsford does or does not become the next Zaroff? You want to show why your stance is significant, important for understanding the story. Be sure to strive for analysis here. So your concluding sentence is going to be one sentence. If you feel like you need 2 sentences, 1 to 2 sentences is sufficient here. So what you want to make sure you're doing is in that concluding sentence, you're not giving any new information. You're just synthesizing what you've already said, and you're really reinforcing your point as to whether or not Rainsford becomes the next Zaroff. Now, in this last box, what you're doing is you're putting everything together. So you're going to go box by box and just copy it into a paragraph. So I'm going to go to my first box, copy it, put it in the box here. And then I'm going to go to my second box, put it, copy and paste, put it into my box here. And the reason I'm doing this is essentially this above here was an outline, and now you're putting it into paragraph form. Once you have it in paragraph form, read it out loud or in your head. Make sure it makes sense as a written response, as a paragraph. It shouldn't sound choppy. It should flow as a normal paragraph would flow. All right, so that's how we complete the most dangerous game written response. I look forward to seeing what you come up with, and make sure you're reaching out to your teacher if you have any questions. See ya.